I don't want my father's death swept under the carpet. I don't feel there are any justifiable reasons that there shouldn't be an inquest. I truly don't.
Lang Hancock left his daughter all this: the estates, the lifestyle, the millions each year in mining royalties to pay for it. Gina Rinehart believes the least she can do is ensure everything possible is done to determine how her father died.
Were there visits by Rose Porteous? Why wasn't Dad in hospital if it was considered that he was this unwell? Why were the medical facilities so inadequate for Dad's condition? These are just some of the questions that this investigative report should have looked at, and it didn't.
It's 7 years since Lang Hancock died from a heart attack. But though police at the time were investigating claims that Rose was trying to poison Lang, there was never a coronial inquiry. The coroner did receive a police report 17 months after the death, and after sitting on it for 4 months, ruled that there was no need for a public inquiry. In his opinion, Lang Hancock died of natural causes. But Gina Rinehart has never accepted that ruling.
It was a very sudden death, an unexpected death, but there were a lot of allegations around that I felt were very serious, allegations that had to be looked into, and I still do.
Gina says a proper examination of her father's life with Rose would reveal that as early as 1987, Lang rewrote his will with this extraordinary clause.
My said wife shall not be entitled to the bequests or to benefit in any other way whatsoever if, in the opinion of the trustees, my said wife has contributed to my death.
As I understand it, Rose is reported to have said that was a joke.
It's a funny thing to describe as a joke. I have actually spoken to the solicitor who wrote that particular will, and his version was, his belief was, that my father was very serious when he gave those instructions. And so much so, he didn't just do it in one will, he repeated it in a number of wills.
Rose Laxon and Lang Hancock met when the young Filipino went to work for him as housekeeper in 1983. She quickly and famously won the widower's heart, and they were married 2 years later.
I think I can carry it.
I think so.
Rose liked to tell everyone she'd come into his life when it was falling apart, and it was she who kept the old man young. Back in 1986, she told Jana Vent theirs was a marriage full of love.
Do you find him sexy?
Very, very sensual.
A sensual man?
He is a very sensual man. I mean, he has to be married to me. Yvonne, if you're there, could you please bring me a bottle of Dom Perignon?
It was a heck of a ride. Limousines, private jets and lavish parties. The flaunting of wealth bordered on the obscene.
If ever I run out and I'd want something real, real bad, he'd give it to me.
Rose took a man once very private and once very careful with his money and opened up his life to a world of ostentation. But behind the glitz, things were not all they seemed.
He had his main office, and then off of it there was also a very large room that was a bedroom, been converted to a bedroom. And he said to me that he had to set up this bedroom because he couldn't get any sleep at home.
Did he say why?
Well, yes, he did, because often he was kept awake by Rose.
Alan Camp, a Perth barrister, worked alongside Lang Hancock in his final months. So it was a stressful situation he was describing. It wasn't necessarily a pleasant situation.
No, it was obviously very stressful. I witnessed him speaking to her on the phone on a number of occasions, and he would get quite distressed.
Were they tense conversations on the phone?
Well, sometimes she was screaming,
Louise Black, as Rose's personal assistant at the time, heard many of the conversations and also recalls receiving letters and this fax from Hancock's doctor. It said, "Your multiple phone calls and harassment of Lang constitute unacceptable behaviour. It must cease." And how did Rose react to that fax?
She still ring anyway, you know, she doesn't take notice.
Do you believe Rose was more concerned about Mr. Hancock's money than his health?
Well, I know he's concerned about the money.
What sort of things would she say to you?
Well, she would say, you know, like in the morning when I go to the house, she would say, when's Mr. Hancock, you know, gonna die? He's still alive, you know. So, things like that. And sometimes I just don't take any notice because, you know, she tells me that nearly every day, you know, when I go there.
There's no doubt that Lang Hancock was a frail 82-year-old man. His heart was weak, his kidneys were giving out, and he had lung problems. In the month before his death, he'd been in and out of hospital several times. But 3 days before he did die, he was allowed to leave hospital. Doctors let him go home, not to die, but because he was well enough to. He was recovering, and he had plans for the future.
He was sick, but he was considered to be well enough to go up to a farm that very weekend, in fact that very day, and he was considered well enough to be going back to work the next week. I'm not pretending he was not sick, but he was considered well enough to be doing all of that and to depart hospital 2 or 3 days earlier.
And so Lang Hancock left his hospital bed and returned to the grandly named Prix d'Amour, the prize of love. Well, not quite. Instead of the mansion, he was installed out the back in a rather dark room in the guest house. There he was assured he would be comfortable and well cared for, with claims that the room had been set up like a mini hospital. It's what happened here just before he died that is the basis for Gina Rinehart's demands for a coronial inquiry. Demands she says she's been making since shortly after her father's death. Did he actually say to you that he believed Rose was hindering his health?
And furthermore to that, he couldn't understand why, because he said he made her one of the richest women in Australia, and he could not understand why she wanted more and more out of him.
Michael Schneider was one of the nurses who looked after Lang Hancock. We spoke to him in Hong Kong, where he recalled 2 fierce arguments between husband and wife in the days before Lang's death. Disputes over money and assets, and what share Rose would get.
She demanded very loudly, actually she was screaming, that he would change some documents. I wasn't at that stage aware of what the documents were, but she wanted him to change these documents from whatever he did to her name, and he totally refused. She was very much on the offensive.
What was Lang's reaction?
He was stressful, he was angry. At one stage I had to give him a certain medication to calm him down. He was not happy.
But in her book, that's not how Rose remembers the meetings. Instead of being stressful for her husband, she writes of them as being serene.
Langley, I'm so frightened of losing you. I love you, Langley George. I just want to die with you.
Don't say that, dear. You're young, vivacious, intelligent and rich. You will marry again. Now let me see your pretty face. Wear a nice dress for me during the funeral and show your dignity to the world.
Even by Rose's own account, Lang was clearly mentally alert. In fact, if you believe Rose, he had other things on his mind.
Sleep with me tonight.
Not until you're well, Hancock. The doctors warned me.
Don't tell them. They're all nuisances. I love you and I'm so glad to be home.
It sounds like a delusion to me. I've never heard it or witnessed it. Mr. Hancock had an indwelling catheter at the time. He was also on dialysis at the time. I find it extremely difficult to believe that he said that.
He was in no fit condition to have amorous thoughts.
I don't think so. No.
She was there threatening legal action, and these arguments were very stressful to Dad in those last few days.
I think the daughter wants to examine whether that stress was occasioned deliberately or recklessly, in which case there could be evidence of an offence, and this is one of the things that the inquest could examine.
We commissioned retired New South Wales coroner Kevin Waller to review the evidence in this case. The police reports, the witness statements, the autopsy, much of the material never before made public. Did you find any evidence of stress being placed on Mr. Hancock from the papers that you read?
Oh yes, there's certainly evidence of stress. There's evidence of shouting matches with his wife. There's evidence of angina after having had those shouting matches.
The day before his death, Lang Hancock took out a restraining order to keep Rose away. A Perth magistrate held a bedside court hearing and heard some extraordinary evidence, including from Mr. Hancock, who said Rose was addicted to pethidine and had been coming into his room yelling, screaming and making threats against him. The magistrate's notes also contained evidence from Mr. Hancock's GP, Dr. Alan Hutchinson.
He, extremely upset, she burst in, argued, harassing him periodically over years. Any stressful situation must be quiet for his illness.
At the end of the hearing, the magistrate was left in no doubt that a restraining order against Rose Hancock should be granted. He wrote, Rose's actions had caused Lang Hancock
great emotional and medical stress and was adversely affecting his condition. The conduct of his estranged wife was offensive and provocative in the circumstances, and of such severity as to cause a breach of peace. Unless restrained, she was likely to behave in the same or similar manner in the future.
When Rose heard about the restraining order, her counterattack was swift and typically Rose. She invited selected media to the mansion to give her simple explanation for the court order.
People must understand that the toxics in his body and the medicines, I mean, he's got the kidneys and the lungs and the heart and medicines for the heart and this and that. All these medicines that he takes, certainly affects the brain.
And as for any suggestions that money and her bickering about Lang's will forced the restraining order, again, Rose was dismissive.
I will not enter into any vulgar and cheap display of fighting over the money of a man who made it himself. If he wants to will it to his dog, let it be to his dogs. If he leaves me $1, I'm happy.
Your father actually made some financial decisions which Rose interpreted as losing money for her. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be the case. She perceived it as something that would mean that she'd get a lot less money than what she hoped to get.
And that was in the final days of his life as well?
Yes, and she saw it as a very immense, amount of money. So, yes, that was something she didn't like at all.
Maybe the restraining order is a frustration. It's an outlet. He sees me full
According to Michael Schneider, Lang became even more agitated when he watched his wife's performance on the television news that night.
He can't even hold me. He says, hug me, and I say, I can't, you're so fragile.
The night nurse calmed the millionaire down and reported his last night alive as comfortable. The morning that Mr. Hancock died, you had left him at 7 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
How was he at that point?
I would say that would have been the best I've seen him. He was out of his bed in a wheelchair, alert, again, very, very optimistic in going back to work the following week after the end of the antibiotic dialysis regime ended, and good.
Yet 2.5 hours after you left him, he was dead.
I know.
Were you surprised?
Extremely.
In those 2.5 hours, Hancock is known to have been on the telephone. Day nurse Susan Neal found one conversation so strange, she made a note of what Hancock had said.
If she keeps quiet, tell her that she won't lose anything, but if she keeps babbling that mouth of hers, that she'll lose the lot, including me, as a husband. Thanks.
Lang died minutes after the phone call, and as the news spread, the Hancock mansion was invaded by police. The Major Crime Squad, the Fraud Squad, forensics, even the sniffer dogs were called in. Rose walked from the mansion to the guest house for a final moment with her husband. She looked distraught, but her daughter Joanna later gave Mike Munro a different version of events.
She rushed up to me and she took me aside and she said, "Are the press buying the sympathetic act? I'm trying to be like the sympathetic wife. Are they buying it? Do I look good? Did you see me on TV? Blah, blah, blah."
This is only a few hours after his death?
Yes, and I said, "No, you looked silly."
Alan Carter is the detective who worked on the Hancock investigation for more than a year. Detective Carter wanted to speak to us, but was prevented from doing so by superiors. It was on the basis of his report the coroner decided there was no need for an inquest. Gina Rinehart says the coroner did not get all the facts.
There are so many things that aren't addressed, and I think this is one of the reasons that the first coroner didn't request that there'd be an inquest, or determine that there should be an inquest, because he simply didn't have the information that should have been provided to him.
Why do you think it's not in there? Why do you think this information that you believe and have been obviously advised of is not in there?
I think it'd be better to ask the officer involved.
What we do know from the police report is there are inconsistencies in some witness statements. For example, Hancock's GP told Perth's Major Crime Squad he never heard any major arguments between Lang and Rose, whereas earlier he told the bedside court he had witnessed arguments. But even more importantly, the police did not or were unable to get statements from some of the key figures, including Rose.
I just can't imagine why they would refuse to cooperate. They could only, of course, refuse to answer questions in an inquest on the basis that the answers might incriminate them. I don't know that they're going that far as saying if we answer questions that could incriminate us, incriminate them for what? But that's one of the unresolved matters in relation to the death.
Particularly disturbing for Coroner Waller was that the investigating police officer Carter failed to mention in the report that he'd been offered a bribe during the course of his inquiry. Carter didn't accept the bribe. He referred the matter to Internal Affairs, but not the coroner.
If he were offered a bribe, well, who offered it and why was it offered? And those are matters that I think should be gone into at some detail.
So, where does this saga rest now? Well, more than a year ago, Gina Rinehart, running out of options, handed a submission to the West Australian Attorney-General, Peter Foss, seeking permission to take the case to the Supreme Court so that it could decide whether or not there should be a coronial inquiry. But Mr. Foss doesn't seem to be in any hurry to make a decision. Do you believe there should be a coronial inquiry?
Yes, there are just too many unanswered questions in relation to the death, and the relatives are entitled to a hearing to clear up the things that they are dissatisfied about. And they're not reaching out for preposterous conclusions. They have evidence to support their suspicions and their worries. And I think they're entitled to a hearing in order to satisfy these.
The energy and vision of Lang Hancock helped make Western Australia what it is today. For a state happy to acknowledge this contribution by renaming a mountain range after him, it is sad and strange how the government keeps shying away from inquiries into his death. Gina Rinehart knows her father did not die peacefully, and as far as she's concerned, there can be no tributes, no memorials until it's found out how he died. What about those people who would say this is about Rose, this isn't about Lang Hancock?
They haven't gone through it, like I have. The person that Dad was frightened of was Rose. The person the police were looking into was Rose. And the person that Dad had to be protected from at the end of his life was Rose.
Certainly there is antipathy between the women, there's no argument about that. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the circumstances of the death of a very famous Australian, which has not been fully explained.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.